Thank you very much for the opportunity to walk you through the MSX platform. What I'm going to do today is cover a lot of the platform capabilities and the major use cases to try to familiarize you with what MSX is, how it works, what the look and feel mean at a general high level. And hopefully you walk away with a good sense of what the platform is all about. I'm locked in right now as a multi-tenant operator. Tenancy and what you see is a function of your RBAC controls. And I'm going to walk you through that in a moment. But everything in MSX is controlled through access. So I'm logged in right now as a multi-tenant operator, which means when I look at my services, and that's what I'm looking up here at the top, I can see that across all the tenants. I could set my access rights so that I could log in as only, say, a tenant operator, in which case tenant operator for Coke, all I would see is Coke. As an admin, I'd see only the admin functions, etc. All that is very configurable, and we'll get into that in a bit. What I'm looking up here at the top is my service dashboard. So MSX is intended first and foremost to be a multi-service platform, and this gets into the selling points of why we did the platform to begin with. What we have is a consistent view across all our services from a single point of view. And I can look at the status across my tenants and my tenant services by simply scanning across. So in this case, I have 4 services running across a series of different tenants. And as I move across, you can see those tenants change. Now, if you look, you'll see that tenant Coke is consistent across all these services I have running. This is, again, one of the big selling points of MSX is under a single tenant model, I can have lots of services running. So as I go out there in the sales force and I'm trying to compete, I'm not competing on a single siloed use case. I'm trying to compete with the spectrum of Cisco's broader spectrum of use cases. And in the service provider space, what we're trying to explain to the customers are they can integrate into the MSX platform, to the backend platform, one time. They can integrate for notifications, for billing, for service catalogs, and they can do that all once. And then every use case that we add takes advantage of all that infrastructure. Now, before I get into the use cases, let's take a look to the left. We have lots of different things that we can look up on the left side. First of all, we have a tenant dashboard. I showed you a service view of MSX. We can also look at the system from the tenant view and what services are running. So here we have tenant Coke again, and you can see that 4 services are subscribed and they're in normal conditions. And you can view this and go through these different menus to drill down from the tenant view of what they have under them. And this is something that customers have been asking us for. It's operationally helpful for some people to look at the tenant view as opposed to the service view. So MSX offers both of these. If we go down a little bit more, we can see all the devices that are currently configured across all of our domains. So as I scroll down here, you can see we have lots and lots of devices subscribed into different use cases across different tenants. And if I wanted to, I could narrow that view across those tenants. I could narrow that view across the different types of devices that are called in, or I could narrow that view for a particular tenant. Depends what my needs are. Now the advantage here is it's a device inventory across all services in the platform. Now that gives me the ability to do configurations across these devices from more than one service. And I'm going to show you that when we go through our use cases. The service catalog is what we use to order things in MSX. Now I'm going to show you examples of ordering through the UI, but this again could have been done all through APIs. Everything that you see here that I'm stepping through with the UI is available as an API, and that's what a lot of our customers make a decision on. Do they want to access the platform and you drive it through a UI, or do they have their own systems? Do they have their own catalog systems and ordering systems or administration systems? And do they want to drive MSX purely through APIs? Both are available. We have a full Swagger interface if you wanted to look at it. So anything I'm showing you that you see today, you could access via the APIs directly. So the catalog offers different offers, monetizable offers, for each tenant. And I can control which tenants see which offers and who can come in and order, what they can order. Can they look at a service and just do it from a read-only, or can they actually provision it? All that is configurable, and I'll show you that. There's an approval system, which goes through as you order different services. You can go through the normal approval process. Let's go down into tenants. So critical for MSX functionality is the ability to provide multi-tenancy. So each tenant in MSX is fully encrypted in its own data space. So what does that mean? In order to qualify for FedRAMP and other programs where they have very strict requirements on data sovereignty, MSX has already done this by encrypting all tenant data across the services with their own keys. So any access that you make in the system using the platform into the use cases, we can assure our customers that that data is fully encrypted and secure amongst the different tenants. Here I can see that I have several services already deployed under tenant Coke, and I have several tenants created. The platform supports thousands of tenants, all ability to add use cases to them. And these are things we've tested to scale in our labs. The users are configured to run on the platform against those services. So I have several here. Some of these are operators. We'll look at mine. Some of these are operators, and I can control the rights of what this user can or can't do. Now I do that by roles. So I can change the roles that a particular user can do. Now what are roles? Roles are really the heart of the RBAC. I have MSX ships with a standard set of roles with controls predefined to simplify this for the operators. But you can add any type of role you want to the system. But let me show you in general what I mean. Here's a Tenant Administrator. As I scroll down, you can see all these actions that are made available to the Tenant Administrator. They can go in and provision devices. They can go in and do things with their operations. Each one of these has restrictions on what they can do. Can they only view this? Could they not view this? Can they manage it, meaning can they provision and make changes to a service? These are all done through the roles for a particular user that are then assigned. A lot of flexibility, a lot of control here. System notifications are how we tie into the back ends of the OSS, BSS systems that are likely driving MSX. So for all the major operations that can occur in the system, we have the option to do northbound notifications in the event something occurs either in the platform or in the use case. So that can be as simple as an email. The system is pretty generic. Or I can change that to a RESTful API and do a very specific notification to a northbound ticketing system, management system, service assurance system, whatever is northbound, however the customer wants to get notified. And I can turn these on and off. So full notifications, as I add more use cases, there'll be more specific notifications for those use cases added. In the platform, we have general settings to configure the providers that you're connecting to, so we can define the integration points between the two. We have the ability to manage NEDs when we're using them, so we can upload new NEDs in the cases that we're using NSO for orchestration, for example. We can go in and do that. We can go in and we can manipulate templates for pushing service configurations down to SD-WAN or SD branch. All that is configurable here in the settings menu. And finally, we have workflows. I'm not going to spend much time on this here, but workflows are something that was added to the platform a couple of releases ago to complement our existing use cases. A lot of customers said to us, boy, I like the prepackaged use cases you have. Gives me the ability to do configurations and service ordering. That's fantastic. I'd like to enhance with more operational visibility into what the services are doing. So we think of workflows in that sense as wrapping around our existing use cases, taking advantage of the platform, and be able to extend our use cases in a customized way for each different customer. And what we found that's pretty consistent across most of our customers. They want a customization capability, and that's why we added workflow to it. So let's go back up to our main dashboard, and let's step into a particular use case. Let's go into SD-WAN first, and I'll jump on another system here so I don't have to interfere with somebody else who's running. I'm going into the service catalog. What we offer in each one of our use cases are those capabilities that are intended to simplify the deployment of a use case. So I'm in the service catalog and I want to order an SD-WAN service. So let's do that first. And I could have lots of different services here. I could fill this up with lots of different items. In my case, this is simplified down to 3 different offers that this provider wants to sell. So I'm going to click on SD-WAN. I'm a multi-tenant operator, so I'll see all my tenants. If I was not a multi-tenant operator, I would only see the tenants that I've been giving access to. So we'll do this for Apple. I don't think anybody's configured anything for that. And I drop into the offer screen. Now what this is going to do is allow us to provide different types of SD-WAN flavors, if that's what our provider wants. There might be a gold version of SD-WAN, a silver, a bronze, and different pricing structures around that offer. All that is available in the platform for all use cases. What I'm going to do is take a standard offer, which this system has, and I'm going to click on it. So I'm going to drop into the SD-WAN ordering system for MSX. Now nothing is configured here yet. What I want to do is add a control plane. So I'm going to click here. Now what type of control plane, what do I want to do with it? I can do 2 methods in SD-WAN. I can attach to an existing control plane, or I can create a new control plane. Attaching to an existing means I have an SD-WAN deployment in an enterprise environment. It's already been set up and run, but that enterprise customer doesn't want to manage it anymore for whatever reason. And we see a lot of this in the field. So in that case, we can attach directly to it, and the MSX SD-WAN microservice use case will do the back-end communication to take over control of that control plane. But let's take a look at the other case where we're going to create a new control plane. Now this is an area that's real interest to us with SD-WAN to accelerate the deployment of an SD-WAN environment. What I'm first going to do is add in a virtual account name. So for the virtual account name, what we're talking about here is our smart account, where we can go in and give information about where we want to provision our sources from. This was set up in the back end of the system in those settings menus I showed you. And I'm giving that virtual account name right here. The system went out and validated that, did some checks behind the system. Yes, you have access to do that. This is a valid virtual account name for your system. And when it did that, it gave you all the versions of SD-WAN that are available to be deployed. So in our case, we'll just pick one here. We'll pick 19.2.1. And who am I? So we'll continue. Now what we're going to do is we're going to interview the operator here to try to get us an idea of how to deploy this service. We're going to deploy this up in AWS, and we want to know what type of scale we should deploy. So again, we're trying to simplify this for the user. So how many devices? We'll say 2,700, between 2,000 and 2,700. And we've already queried to find out what regions are available for you. So we'll say the primary is going to be in US West with a secondary in US East. Now what this will do is, based on that size in AWS, we will go out and make our recommendations for you for how many vManagers are required, how many vBonds, how many vSmart instance controllers are recommended. And we can look at the details on that. And if we wanted to, we could change that. So let's say we didn't like that region, we wanted to change it. We wanted to change this from Virginia to California. I'm going to save that. If we wanted to, we could add another vManager. Or if we decided that we don't need that type of capacity, we could restrict it. The same with the vBond and the same with the vSmart controllers. So what we're doing here is, with the MSX interface, trying to make the experience for ordering a control plane up in AWS, and we also support this in OpenStack, as simple as possible. When I submit this, this is going to go off and deploy the AWS control plane, and all of that will now be available in MSX. So let's take a look at what a deployed control plane looks like in MSX. So here we are. We're going to go in from the service status view rather than the catalog view, because I've already got a control plane deployed. And I'm going to zoom in. Now what I see are all the devices that have currently been deployed for my control plane running in AWS for Tenant Coke. And I could change that to any other operator I want because I'm a multi-tenant operator. And I see there's several devices. And I can see the statuses for them. Let me drill down a little bit. And I'll drill down into Boston. So I have two devices deployed here, an MX60 and an SD-WAN device. So what this is telling me is, for Tenant Coke, we've actually deployed devices in SD-WAN for Viptela and Meraki. The MSX platform supports both of those use cases under SD-WAN. Now I could go and I could add another site. So let's take a look at that, what that means. I'm going to add a site. I walked you through the process of adding a control plane. Let's look how easy it is to add a Meraki site, for example. I'll say continue. I'll enter in some basic names. We'll just put Katuitan. It's simple. And we'll add my name. Continue. Now what we do for Meraki is we allow you to create different types of networks and attach different devices to them. What I can do, and to make this really simple, and this is the way the Meraki typically recommends, I could clone from any of my existing networks that I've deployed that are available to this tenant. So again, we're doing this under the tenancy model to make sure that we can control what this operator can order and what they can't, what they can see and what they can't. So these are all the networks that I could choose. So I could choose the MX60W network, and I could clone it to a brand new network. So a lot of flexibility here. But let's say we wanted to go and we wanted to add a site for Viptela. So now we want to show you how simple that can be. Let's continue in. I can decide what types of devices do I want to add to Coke's control plane. Physical devices, vEdge cloud devices running down on an ENCS, or I have devices up in the SP cloud. Doesn't matter, we can deploy any of them. Let's take the more difficult case, which is I want to deploy a vEdge VNF running down on ENCS over NFVIS hypervisor. I want to deploy that and connect it into this control plane. How would I do that? So we're going to click on vEdge Cloud, continue. What MSX is doing behind the scenes is negotiating with the vManage for this tenant to determine the licensing information. And as with all services, we're very consistent with how we do this. I'm going to ask for the same general information, so I can do mapping. And then we'll do Mike. Okay, continue. Now, what I have here are options for deployment. I could deploy a vEdge with an ASAV for security. Or I could deploy something simple. I could do a single IP with just the vEdge device. What we're showing here as the left is a catalog of service chain capabilities. What MSX does is provide you the tooling to add as many different service chains as your customer wants to make money on. So the idea of creating service chains is simplified through the MSX tooling. We have a system tool called the TDE, template development environment, which walks the user through a very simple drag and drop capability for creating these templates that we then automatically insert into our catalogs. So the operator can add and remove these as they see fit. In this case, they're going to restrict two options. You can order security, high V-edge with security, or without. So in this case, let's take it without, and we'll say continue. Now, what does the system require you? Most of the information is already filled in. The only thing I have to do as an operator is pick a network number for my system IP, name my site, we'll call it LAX, site ID, let's call it 42, and then a host name, we'll call this one LAX, and continue. Once I've done that, I can tell you a little bit something about my infrastructure. So I already mentioned that this runs automatically on an ENCS. So I want to be able to choose the type of hardware I'm deploying on. So this might be an ENCS 5412. And then here I have to enter a valid number that could be used for an ENCS. And you can see here that it looks, and we can automatically determine that's not a valid ENCS number. Now I think I have one here saved. Let me go up here and I'll grab it, put it, so yeah, right here. We'll take this one. I'll put that in. The system determines, yes, that's a valid serial number for an ENCS and allows me to take it. And then how do I want to onboard it? I won't go into all the details, but in this case, I want to deploy this with a single IP network. So in the end, this is what I'm going to deploy. I'm going to add a V-Edge device to this tenant coke. It's going to deploy it as a VNF service chain, and it's going to run it on the ENCS. So I would submit that. So what would that then look like? Now this is the real interesting part of MSX. If you remember right, as that goes in provisions, if you remember, MSX is a multi-service under a common tenancy model. So we were over here deploying tenant coke. When we deployed that V-Edge VNF, we invoked our SD branch use case. And we did that multi-domain provisioning automatically. So we went in under tenant coke. I'll drill down in here so you can see it. We went in and we provisioned that VNF. So here's LAX. And if we click on that and drill down on it, we'll get the details. I'm going to make sure you can see that. So this is the Los Angeles airport. If we go down and drill down onto that, what we'll see is all the characteristics that were done automatically, driven through the SD-WAN use case. Now, what did we do? We provisioned a physical infrastructure, the virtual networks, and the VNFs. I'll show you some more details. All necessary to download the image, set up the different particular flavors of the VNF, boot up the VNF, bring it to an alive state, detect it was alive, and then push configuration down. Now the user doesn't have to know about that, doesn't have to understand all the different characteristics of what we mean. So if we look at the deployment log, this is interesting, but we don't really want the user to have to worry about what these different steps mean. What's important is if we scroll down here, we deployed a V-Edge VNF, that's up. We can see our hardware. There's our serial number and our IP address that we configured, that's up. And it represents our service chain. When that V-Edge boots up, we configure it with the bootstrap config, so it automatically calls home to the appropriate VBond for that SD-WAN site and inserts itself into the network, all automatically. Now, I mentioned templates. Here's where we could go and we could add different template capabilities to the system. So I could control and restrict access to what tenants can run a particular template. Now, what is a template? Template is this type of VNF service chain that's defined to be deployed when a user selects it. So you remember this one from the SD-WAN catalog. Well, here's where I pull them all in. And here's where I decide that, say, tenant Pepsi cannot have access, or tenant 2 cannot have access to this, or maybe only one tenant, or I can change it to unrestricted. And I can go through here and have different types of deployments. Here's a single MPLS router, for example. Here's an MPLS router with security. Again, we give you the tooling with MSX to add as many of these as you feel are appropriate with either Cisco or third-party devices, whatever it is you need to generate your offers for your particular revenue models. Now, if I wanted to, let's cancel out of this. I could go back in SD branch and I could add another site to this. So we'll just do this quickly. I won't actually configure it. We'll just go through and I'll show you real high level. I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, I'm going to create another site. We'll stay with our Katuit model. And continue. And you can see that if I wanted to, I could go in here and just do VNF service chains under my same tenant model Coke. So we're all the same constructs, all the same interfacing, all the backend data platform is the same no matter which use case I move to. And I could order, say, a single MPLS branch right from here. I could continue through and I could order that and provision it in just the same way you saw me do from SD branch. So this is very exciting. 2 use cases tied together very tightly. The customers can use them as they see fit, but they don't have to understand what the mechanics are underneath that we're using to deploy these use cases. So let's jump back up here and we'll take a look at the main dashboard. Let's take a look at our next use case, SD access. Again, I have Tenant Coke subscribed here, and I have an actual system that's deployed in Boxborough. If I haven't logged out of it yet, because I may have timed out, let's just try it out and see how we're going to do. So this MSX is running in an OpenStack environment on in our Boxborough campus. So let's take a look at what we've done for SD access. First of all, we have the same system level view as we did for many other service. I only have one tenant subscribed. This might even be restricted to a single Coke tenant. So I'm going to go in here and I want to see what that looks like. Let me take you through a different view though of it. Let's go in through the Tenant Dashboard. So let's look at this thing from the tenant view rather than the services view. So I'm going to go in here and I want to look at my Coke's view of this service. So we're going to drill down and we can see for Tenant Coke, we have one service deployed with 14 devices. The only service we've deployed right now is SD Access. So let's click on SD Access. Now, what's the purpose of SD Access? It's to federate DNAC campus environment below it. So what are we taking advantage here? DNAC, powerful platform, can do so much. What we're doing here is we're federating that capability under the tenancy model that our provider is already using. So DNAC is taking advantage of all of that. The Northbound integrations, the data platform, the offers, the coexistent with all the other services I've been showing you, the alert system, the notification system, the health and monitoring, all centrally located. If we go down here, we can get a quick look at, we see we have 2 DNACs. We can drill down under those, and we're speaking to those systems to pull up the statistics, the relevant statistics, so we can represent them at the higher view. So an operator can quickly move between the different systems and check on the health of that particular system. So we can go here, so let's pick this one right here, multi-domain site. And here what I'll do is aggregate the relevant statistics from DNAC for that location. And I can look at the health of the wired devices, non-wired devices. I can see what profiles are deployed. If I wanted to, I could launch directly into the network profiles of that particular DNAC. So huge advantage for an operator to be able to quickly move amongst different DNAC functions quickly from one view. But I could stay here and I could scroll down and look and see, what does my fabric look like? What's the status of my fabric? I could go up and I could make simple changes to it. So I'm going to click up here and I can see that I have access to it. So I might want to go and I might want to do something with this. I might want to say, okay, let's take this Ottawa fabric and let's associate it with another capability. And I'm just going to pick a couple here because we're going to associate 2 virtual networks. And I won't go through the whole process, but what I'm showing you here is that we can quickly walk through the major capabilities that are exposed in DNAC at my central MSX location. And I can do this across multiple DNACs. So you can see how this starts to make the provisioning capabilities that we're running in DNAC, the power is in DNAC, but the aggregation and tenancy model is running up in MSX. Very, very powerful. So let's scroll back down where we were. I can see all my templates that are available for manipulating my services that are running. And these are all, again, aggregated for ease of operational use. If I wanted to change a policy, I could go into my devices, and I get a list of devices that I can change. So let's just pick one here. We'll pick a border router. And I'm getting the general information that this is a provisioned site. It's onboarded and provisioned. Let's say I wanted to push a new template that would change policy. So I'm going to check push template. So quickly we get a look of the different sites that I could deploy. And I could change those. This is actually a live running system in Boxborough. So you can see I have a host of systems to select from. And I could provision from the different network profiles that are available for that particular site. I could change that to another building. I'll fetch the profiles for that particular building, and I could deploy them just as easily. Power of DNAC, the power of MSX to federate those functions that our providers are telling us that they can make money on if we can facilitate the deployment. And that's not just the SDA service. This applies across all use cases. So you can see what we're trying to do is unify the approach for provisioning across our use cases and take advantage of the platform in doing so. So that's a high view. We have the ability to really drill down on this with you and go as deep on any particular one of these use cases you want to see. This is just a high-level view for us to walk through. So please reach out to us if you want to do that. I'll just quickly touch on Managed Device to try to summarize this. Managed Device is our service to deploy configurations to infrastructure. So I have physical or virtual devices, firewalls, routers, Cisco or third party, and I want to deploy configurations to them. So here again is our Coke service. I'll drill down on that. I'll get a set of devices that are configured under Coke. And let me view this from a list view. If I wanted to as an operator, I could quickly look and I could look at the configuration of a deployed site. Now again, we're using RBACs, but I can quickly pull the configuration. I could download this if I was an operator. If I wanted to, I could go in and I could make a change. So we'll just make a quick change here. We're getting status of the system. We're pulling health and statistics, trying to make a common view with all our other use cases. And I want to make a change. I have a set of templates that are deployed, and I'll show you those in a moment. But what I've done with these, let's just take one right here. I've set the umbrella DNS location for CPE. It's set right now to 8.8.10. Let's make this 11. And I'm going to provision it. Without worrying about how we provision it and what all this means, what I'm showing you here is that I can quickly make a provisioning change by as simple as a point and click. And if I wanted to, I could look at that configuration again. I'll click up here on Show Configuration. We'll do a real-time pull, and there you can see the configuration change is taken. So ease of manipulation of configurations for infrastructure. And again, just like an SD branch or an SD-WAN, we have a host of templates controlled by access rights of who can control them and who cannot on what they can do. So ASAs, BGP, we've got a host of them here. Same model, same format as all the others. So that's a high-level introduction for you. These are just some of the use cases. We have SDKs, which we could cover, that allow you to create new services in MSX. And we have a series of groups now that are doing that. We could walk you through those. We have a whole development environment that's made to facilitate the creation of new services and add them to our catalog and add them in here to our service view. They all take advantage of the same platform primitives so that we can accelerate the service catalog of what we can offer to our customers. So thank you very much for your time. I hope this is helpful. And again, if any of this you need to drill down deeper, we can quickly get together and discuss that in more detail. Thanks for your time.